Hello and welcome to another episode of the GC Sunscast. I'm your host Shane. Joining me on the line is Tom. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Yeah, g'day Shane. How are you this week?
Yeah, pretty good. I see you've been getting involved on Twitter, making a lot of new friends on there, so good stuff.
Oh, mate, Twitter, we're killing it on Twitter. What are we up to now? We've got to check because it seems like we're getting more followers every day. Actually, we've got one less follower. We've got 18. We started with 6. We've got 18 followers. Were you the one to unfollow us, Shane?
No, but I think we've got a fair idea of who that is, and you probably need to be a bit more careful with how you speak to people on Twitter.
Oh yes, definitely. Already been banned from one major social media enterprise this year, so trying to make it 2.
Yeah, but that is part of your charm, Tom. That's why we've got you on the show. You're very strong with your opinions, and some people like it, some people hate it. You can't please them all.
You can't, can you? But listen, we've had a interesting weekend with footy. We've had 3 games. So obviously the AFL seniors is the one that everyone's keen to follow and keen to hear a bit of analysis about. But we've also had an interesting NEFL game, and our AFLW, well, it's not really our AFLW side, but our AFLW players who are locked in, and also some up-and-comers who are hopeful of getting a contract, did pretty well on the weekend. Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute.
Yeah, we will. First of all, we'll go through the usual admin stuff. You've obviously found us if you're listening to the show. You can find us on YouTube as well. We are live at the moment. The best way to find that is to jump on our Facebook page and find the link, which appears at 7 o'clock every Tuesday night. Now, we also are on Patreon, and Patreon is our listeners' chance to help us out on the show, help us keep the technology and the content running. It really sort of inspires us and keeps us motivated to keep working on this while the football club's not at its best. And I'd like to thank our Patreon donors, Old Soul, Jack's Dad, Paul Vosti, Tom Kim, Chris Moore, James Wood, and Tony. You guys are our Patreon sponsors for this month, and we couldn't do the show without you guys. Now, we have something special to announce. This is episode 46. I think I might have put 45 in the title by mistake. I'll fix that later. So this is episode 46, and we are only 4 episodes away from episode 50. The big 50 for the Gold Coast Sunscast. So we've got a special announcement to make to celebrate our 50th episode, and it's going to be more of a celebration over the length of a week, and we would like to open up and show all of our listeners and supporters and followers what would happen if we were to achieve all of our Patreon goals. So, the 49th episode is, as usual, on Tuesday the 13th of August. We will have a special episode on the Thursday the 15th of August to chat about selections. So Tom and I will be on the online, I guess, on the air at about 6:30, 7 o'clock on the Thursday night to discuss the selections of the Gold Coast Suns for that game and talk more about the game that's coming up, because most of the time in these episodes we're talking about the game that's just gone past. And then on Sunday the 18th of August, Gold Coast Suns take on Hawthorn down in, I think it's Marvel. I could be wrong. It's not on the Gold Coast. That's the important thing.
And it's not in Tasmania.
No.
It's in Marvel Stadium.
So Tom and I will be doing a live commentary off the game. Now, you'll be able to listen to that on Spreaker the same way you listen to the episodes. Now, obviously, with that, you guys will be able to chat to us live, and it's going to be more of a chat, a friendly chat, talking about the Suns specifically. We get a lot of complaints about the commentary for the AFL games, how it's usually focused and biased towards the Victorian teams. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to add some Gold Coast Suns flavour. So press red for Ed if if you'd like, or whatever it is. It's the GC Sunscast Live, chatting about the game as it's going on. So there will be some issues with that. We're not entirely sure how it's all going to work out just yet. Yeah,
we might have to get our sponsors to send us to Melbourne to make it clear, or else we might have to find a pub.
Yeah, at this stage, I'm imagining it's just going to be us, me and Tom, sitting in front of the TV, watching the footy, having a chat as we would with the podcast, and our listeners might have to sync up the episode to whereabouts they're watching it. Maybe KO, but it should be a fairly accurate stream, as we'll be watching the Channel 7 broadcast, so we don't get any sort of delays. Now, with that said, let's focus on today's show, and we'll start off with the injuries, Tom.
Well, poor old Will Brodie doesn't seem to be able to catch a break. He's finally got himself a pretty much man of the match performance. I mean, I know that we'll talk about who he did as best on ground, but he was one of them, I think, for both of us, and really did the job that everyone's been expecting him to sort of evolve into over the last couple of years. And he's gone and done a hammy, and he hasn't just done a hammy. He has had a bit of an unusual injury to his hamstring, which ordinarily it might put him out for 4 weeks, and he could be a chance to come back for the last one or two games. But this type of hammy, he's just gone. There's no chance of coming back in that sort of 4 week time frame. So, Brogues, mate, you did a great job of getting yourself back into the 22 and solidifying your place. Bloody hell, we just can't catch a break. I'm really devastated by this one. What about you, Shane?
Yeah, Brodie was easily one of the best on field for that game against Carlton, and losing him in that sort of form is really going to hurt the Suns. But the good side from it, the silver lining, is if the Suns are going to lose any player through injury, probably needs to be an inside mid, because we've got plenty of those. We've got Miles coming back from suspension this week, so the perfect replacement for Will Brodie there. And straight swap, isn't it? Straight swap. It's probably not going to hurt us short term. It's probably just a few less games under Brodie's belt that we were hoping to get into him. But no.
Well, there's a few more injuries to go through. So Jordan Murdoch's missed a couple of weeks, although it sort of wasn't really that noticeable because he wasn't in the top 22 senior team. He's back this week. He'll have a test on Thursday, but he'll be back. But the two players we've been really looking forward to coming back into the team, and if they pass their tests on Thursday, more likely than not, they come straight back into the AFL side, and that's Ben Ainsworth and Jack Bowes.
I'm a big fan of Bosey.
I actually met him a couple of weeks ago, Shane, at the when they did the players, not just players, but they did the club function. And you know what he said to me?
He said he's coming back for the Brisbane game.
No. He said, "Where's your ball, mate?" He thought I was you. He knew about the match ball, and he thought I was coming to meet him to sign it. Because, of course, I have my GC Sunscast T-shirt on. So you'll have to find another way to meet Jack in person with your ball there, Shane. And the other thing is that day, the bloody bloke sitting behind me got the match ball. I was just that close to getting it. Oh, I would have loved to have been able to one-up you. Anyway, I'm sure Jack will be happy to meet you and sign your ball any old time. Let's finish the injuries. They didn't give us... There's a lot of stuff that wasn't given in the last couple of weeks that's now given. So Jack Martin may only be a week or two away with his finger, so he's pretty much confirmed to come back at some stage this season. He won't play this week. Aaron Young, 3 to 4 weeks. Touch and go on whether he'll be back this season in either of the sides. And Mitch Reardon, also 3 to 4 weeks, which is unfortunate because he was heading into some really good form. And as we followed last week, Cal Archie, he might come back and and make a final appearance in the final game or even earlier, because it seems like his rehab is going better than expected. Isaac Rankin, unfortunately, is still TBA, and so is Gerber. They have now added 3 more players who will be out for the season. I mentioned Brodie. Nick Holman and Will Powell, unfortunately, will not be back this year. I don't know about you, but I read that, for all 3, I read that as put them on ice, they're top 22, well, not necessarily I'm getting ahead of myself here. They've been playing senior footy this year. They're not needed to come back underdone or further risk themselves. So on ice, which means we can now get 6 players out of our 48 who have no chance of playing for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. And we'll get to that. Well, I mean, we'll sort of highlight that a bit later when we talk about the NEFL side, because the Lions had 21 listed players to the Suns 9. And either the Suns are just... I mean, we're still suffering some sort of injury curse, clearly. Because other clubs seem to be able to field a second side. And I guess the Suns just don't have enough players on their list to be able to field a competitive NEFL side.
Well, I mean, look, the Victorian teams have the VFL, and the VFL are clubs in of themselves. So the AFL has no control over, even though there are reserves teams, and of course they do have control, but even those reserves teams, they behave like a VFL club, like Box Hill Hawks, for example. They have their own players. So Sam Fletcher was going to play for Box Hill Hawks this year, and we picked him up in the preseason. They have their own teams, and they're strong. They go with undrafted players, as with the Tigers picked up Sydney Stack as an undrafted player and checked him out and then signed him up. So we don't have that mechanism, and I think that's one of the things the club's going to look at, trying to get that, because we can't just stick them all in Southport and then ask to borrow their B graders or their players who aren't needed in the top 23. We need to have some ready to go players who are going to have some sort of competition to play in. If it's not NEFL, then it's got to be something else. And to be honest with you, it'd be good to have a bit of competition within that secondary group, so that if you're not up to NEFL level, you're going back to Broadbeach or whatever, which isn't to besmirch the quaffle, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're not playing well, you're not playing NEFL, whereas at the moment, if you're fit, they throw you a jumper.
Yeah, I might ask some of my family members that still live in Adelaide what the go is with the Sandful and the Adelaide side and the Port Adelaide side in there, because I know it was only a few years ago, I think, Adelaide created a Sandful side where they could control the development of their players. Now, surely they've either got top-ups or they've got an allowance to have extra players in that Sandful side. It may be similar to what you said with the VFL, where it's sort of its own club. But the Suns probably need to look at that as a bit of a model and try and create their own competitive NEFL side. And that's a whole other argument, the NEFL, and how the Suns can remain competitive, because clubs are doing it. You see the Sydney Giants and the Lions, dominating that field, and the Suns, they're lucky to beat some of the other sides in the comp that aren't AFL level. Canberra, we lost to Canberra, I think, in the first game.
Yeah, and that was with a full complement, but I think that was more down to such a massive change in the list.
Yeah.
So the top of our list was cohesive enough to be competitive. The bottom of our list barely knew each other's name. Well, that's exaggerating, but you know what I mean. Like, they hadn't played together in a competitive game, and it really showed against Canberra because they had the talent and quality, but Canberra are a well-drilled unit and they want to play finals.
Yeah. All right, well, before we finish up with the news, we'll give a shout-out to a good news story that's popped up on the Suns today. Nathan Thrower, a 14-year-old who suffers from acute myeloid leukemia was the junior mascot for the Suns and got to live out one of his dreams on the AFL field on Saturday, running out with the club before the Carlton game. And, you know, it's such a heartwarming story, feel-good story of the club reaching out and looking after, you know, a kid that's struggling, going through some really tough stuff that, you know, you wouldn't wish upon your worst enemies. And, you know, Braden Fiorini standing up, he's this kid's role model, and, you know, taking it on board himself to include this the young Nathan in the club and really make him feel special. So, yeah, fantastic news story from there. Jump onto the Gold Coast Suns article if you want to know more. There's a little interview there with his mother. Yeah, really touching story. All right, Tom, let's jump into the games for the weekend. And let's start off with the women's under 23.
Yeah, look, there was a fantastic effort. We'll put it this way: the team that's put together, they did play in Suns jerseys, but it's basically an under 23 opportunities team. So it's coached by the AFLW Suns coach David Blake, or Ricky as I like to call him, and a majority of the players were aligned with the Suns Academy or are already actually signed with the Suns, but there were some other players from the other team who I mentioned. Although the majority of those have yet to secure a contract, so, you know, if they go well enough and they want to move down the M1, they're more than welcome. And they had a victory, so we're claiming it. It's a victory for the Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah, it was an 18-point win, 4 goals, 8-32 to WA's 2 goals, 2-14. Yorston, Suns signing, kicked 2 goals, so good to see some Suns players getting in amongst the mixed. And Yorston was also voted best on ground by the WA side. And
yeah,
Groves,
she's a massive signing for us. She's just fantastic.
Absolutely. And Groves Little as well. Tori Groves Little was voted best on ground from Queensland. And yeah, she was fantastic as well, running off half back, actually, playing a role she played as a junior, and actually made it to under All Australian level during that year. So it's good to see her sort of going back to her roots and really dominating.
I think we should shout out to our regular listener, Mr. Bodds, because he knows a bit more about Tori Groves Little and her from her junior days. So and he did send me a message about her. So thank you, Mr. Bodds. But we won't continue on that one. Look, what a great performance they led from start to finish against. You can only imagine WA would have had a strong side. So, you know, really good signs for the girls. They're technically Queensland under 23s, but playing in the Suns jerseys. So, you know, what a bonding performance to finally be able to say we've won something, because they've played some tough sides like Brisbane Lions in the Winter Series, and obviously since they've emerged from the under-18s academy and got the senior players, this is the first time there's been a W next to them, and a really good news story.
Yeah. All right, before we move on, I have to ask, why do you call the coach Ricky?
Oh, I forget how young you are. There's a very... You know Oprah?
No. Yeah, I do. It's not like I watched the show, though.
Yeah. But look, when you were growing up in the 80s, as I was, there wasn't very much on the TV when you were on school holidays, so you kind of end up watching these funny shows called Oprah and Ricky Lake. And Ricky Lake was very funny. So Ricky Lake, David Lake... I think a lot of our listeners probably get it and are having a bit of a snort right now. You don't get it, it's all right. Google it, mate.
That's all right. I'll stick to my Fortnite. I'm in that generation and I'm proud of it. All right, well, let's go on to the NEFL report. Now, another great day for the Suns, but as expected, when the Lions have 21 listed players to the Suns 9, it's not going to be a great result. So the Lions won 79 points. Suns had 2 goals, 5-17 to 13 goals, 18-96. And we only kicked 2 goals, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and one of them didn't make the highlights package because, as I've provided on our GC Sunscast Facebook page, I provided a bit of footage to demonstrate why the NEFL associated camera person was a little bit distracted whilst Sammy Fletcher was kicking his first ever NEFL goal, first goal in Suns colours. Well, I don't know if you can call white Suns colours any longer, but anyway, the retro, what's called the retro Clash jersey. And anyway, you can if you want to see what I'm talking about, go on and have watch that video. Look, my overall thing I want to say about this NEFL performance is the first half was willing. Young bodies going up against mature bodies. About 10 of those Lions players could be playing and have been playing in the Lions' successful senior team this year. A lot of the others are recent draftees from the last couple of years' drafts, and they're pretty decent quality, either academy or first or second round draft picks. So this wasn't a performance where the Suns were ever a chance to win. And honestly, the Lions on paper should have won by 120 points. So kudos to the Suns with more than half the team coming out of the academy. Andrew Swallow pulled on David's old jersey, number 24, and led the team. Obviously, that will be really good for those guys. The gang, the academy gang, don't need to mention their names, so I mention them every week. They are led by Connor Butterick. They're all fantastic. They're going to be better for the performance. Unfortunately, Sammy Fletcher will have a bit of a headache because Matty Eagles absolutely snapped him in half in a real, like the definition of a dog hit. So a dog hit is when somebody hits you from behind and hits you in the back of the head.
Yeah, right on. So I'm not that young.
I don't know if Matty Eagles will be playing NEFL for the next week or 3. Because it was bloody terrible. But what it meant was, even though Sammy Fletcher couldn't walk straight, he was able to kick his first goal from directly in front, which we didn't see on the video because they were too busy watching George Hall-Smith and our favourite Lion, Nick Robertson, have a bit of a bargee. But anyway, have a look at that. But yeah, the NEFL team, they're running on empty, but at the same time they're blooding young talent, and I think those players will be better off in a year or two for having played a lot of NEFL. And you think back to guys like Jack Bowes, played a bit of NEFL before he was drafted, and it really made him ready to play AFL football in his first season.
Yeah, and one of those young bloods that were, I guess, thrown with the baptism of fire on the weekend, Connor Butterick, sorry. He was one of the Suns' best, had over 20 disposals, looked really at home at that level. So hopefully with improvement and potential, he should get to the stage where he looks at home at AFL level as well in a few years.
Yeah, and well, the best player for the Lions was a fellow by the name of Corey Lyons, who's the younger brother of Jared Lyons, and there's a lot of press about Jared Lyons. We won't go into it, but I will say this. Jared Lyons is the guy who's keeping Corey Lyons out of the AFL senior team. So a bit of an interesting insight there. Maybe Corey, after 3 years on the rookie, or not exactly rookie list, but 3 years on the list without a senior debut, might be looking for a new home at the end of the year.
No, it's a package deal. Jared comes with him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
No, look, I was one of Jared Lyons.
There's a lot we can say, but let's just say good on you, Jared. You're picking up your game like you said you would. But I don't think we've necessarily missed him. There's a lot more to the story.
Yeah, I was one of Jared Lyons' biggest fans when he came to the club, and his first couple of years at the club, really strong on him. But there were obvious reasons why he was let go, and some of those reasons aren't being published in the press, but all the best to him. You always want to see people living up to their potential, and Jared Lyons is just one of those players that works better in a stronger side. Now,
sure, and he did the right thing. What he did was finish his season with the Suns and went straight under the knife. He every other player went on Mad Monday and went on their trips to Bali and other places around the world, and sometimes those players find out their trade fate from around the world. Well, he did as well as he could to get himself back into shape, and he was ready to play for the Suns all year, and just circumstances just sort of changed, and he didn't really like his end-of-year review. He figured playing half the season quite injured, and we said it so many times on the show that he's so slow and he's obviously got problems. And I saw the game in Ballarat where he got 15 touches and barely spent half the game on the ground because he was injured. So there's a lot more to it. But good luck to him. We've moved on. He's moved on, and it just spices up the Q clash as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Brisbane's up on top. I don't expect us to win, but I bloody expect us to turn up and throw a few punches and show them we're not pushovers. Let's jump into the AFL results. So Gold Coast Suns took on Carlton down in Melbourne. 11 goals 9.75 to 15 goals 9.99. Carlton won by 24 points. Sexton kicked 3 goals. Wright kicked 2 goals. Not a terrible game of football. It was better than what I thought it would be. It was just... how do you put it, Tom?
I think it was a high standard. I think a lot of people said that a lot of the commentators, and they maybe they're talking it up, but they said it didn't feel like 17th versus 18th. There was a contest. There was genuine go. I just think at the end of the day, the Suns just had far too many teenagers playing, which up until now has been the problem in the NEFL, and that's just growing. But yeah, the senior side, you can afford to have one or maybe two of those really young guys playing, and we had 10.
Yeah. Well, anyone that watched the game, especially in the first quarter, would understand why we're keen to jump on and do our own sort of commentary for the Suns-Hawthorn game, because a lot of the talk was about Carlton. My wife was sitting down next to me watching the game of football, and she watches maybe one game of football a year. And she asked why they're always talking about the other side. And I said, well, they don't care about Gold Coast. Literally no one in Melbourne cares about Gold Coast, except for a few supporters. And I'm sure a few of those are listening to the show right now. But it became almost comical when they flashed up the coaches on the screen and had Chris Fagan, Brisbane Lions coach, under Stuart Dew. Did you see that one, Tom?
Yeah.
The title card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The gaffes are just they'd be comical if it wasn't your team. At least this year they seem to be calling the players by their right names. Although I do notice if they don't know the player's name, they just don't say anything. So Corey Ellis ended up with 20 touches, and I think you heard his name called 3 times, and the first 2 times was to point out clangers that he'd made. So unless his number is square on and they've got the cheat sheet in front of them, they don't tend to really understand. Did you even hear Jacob Heron's name called all game? I mean, I know.
I thought I might have heard it once. I heard Dawson's name mentioned a few times.
He did a lot of good things.
But I think Dawson's a bit more noticeable with the shaved head.
Yeah, he and Goober look like they're about 30 years old. They make a good pair. But you know what? At the function after the footy a couple of weeks ago, Jacob Dawson was standing there with the fans signing footies, and he had a Goober-sized grin the whole time. Love that kid. Really, really hope that he's got an AFL future. He's one of those guys who picked up in the rookie draft, and it's a long shot that he's going to last the distance. But yeah, no, I love Dawson. He and Jacob Heron, had Dawson's first time he's played this year, and Heron had a much improved game. He got a lot more of the ball and did some nice things. This is an opportunity to blood these guys. Of course we're going to play our top 10 draft picks. That's just a no-brainer. You've got to get the footy into them, but you don't really have an obligation to get the footy into the rookies, and that's what we're doing at the moment. So, to see. But as I said, just far too young. We're just far too young. Carlton were almost at their best, weren't they? Like they've told not Jeremy McGovern, what's his name? Younger McGovern.
Mitch McGovern.
Mitch McGovern. They've told him to go and lose a few kilos and get a bit of form. They brought in. They traded out their concessions, but they brought in some mature age players in Gibbons. And they traded in Nick Newman from the Swans, who we didn't appear very interested in.
Yeah.
And they're holding on to some 30-something players because they're good, but you kind of get the feeling that this is as good as Carlton is going to get. Whereas we've got all the potential in the world.
I think Carlton, they've still got some stars there. Cripps, Kerno. I think one of the guys that they keep talking about is O'Brien. There's McKay as well. But it's all very much focused, I think, on the forward line and the midfield, because you've also got Walsh coming in through there. But I don't think Carlton's got the potential that the Suns have. Just they're further down the track. The Suns' potential with blokes like Ainsworth, Bowes, Weller, some of our younger guys, Brody, then the three blokes we picked up last year, King, Rankin and Lukosius, plus McLennan as well. There's a lot more talent on the Suns list. They're just further away from where Carlton are. So I think that's what you're trying to say. How did you think the Suns played in that game? Because I noticed two halves, I thought, and looking at the heat maps really sort of emphasises that the first half was very much played on Carlton's terms. They were running wide, getting uncontested possessions, and the Suns were trying to play more of a contested ball game, lock it up as they have been for most of the year. And that didn't go our way very well. I think Carlton had two run-ons where they each kicked about 3 or 4 uncontested goals. Then it switched in the second half to be more of a Suns style of play. The Suns came out, they were more attacking. They were taking the ball down the corridor and using it really well. And their heat maps also showed that they were running out wide as well to try to get those uncontested possessions. So even though the Suns got smashed in uncontested possessions against the Blues, we were negative 50-odd. We were better in contested possessions, but I think it's starting to come through and show that the Suns' new game plan is definitely more attacking, take the game on and go through the corridor.
Yeah, I think it's just execution, to be honest. I think, and I'm going to refer here to an article in the Gold Coast Bulletin on Saturday, which a lot of people would have read, but I think it's worth going through again. It's execution. So John Haynes, who's the GM of football, he's basically come in and said the Suns are starting to layer in what the offense looks like and what our ball movement looks like. At different times over the past few weeks, we've seen the ball movement start to take shape. The evolution of our offensive ball movement has also played a part in more turnovers going back the other way. Like all game styles, the development will take some time to embed and become consistent. So I interpret that as when you start to see us go through the guts, which we haven't been doing in the first year and a half under Dew, and I've been seeing it a lot more effectively done in the NEFL. In fact, the video I posted is one perfect example. If you can go from the right-hand back pocket to the left-hand half-forward flank and move the ball without stopping the mark and go back, you're going to have an inside 50 to a player on the lead. And we don't do that very often. So we're starting to see it. I mean, our our inside 50s by the end of the game was 53, which is pretty healthy, and it's pretty good for us. There just wasn't quite the conversion. Our marks inside 50 was 9. We end up kicking 75, which is actually better than usual for us, but it's just not going to be good enough to get that forward pressure that we want to do. So, yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's a welcome change in game plan. Unfortunately, when you look at those heat maps and the stats at the end of the game, the turnovers just kill us.
Yeah,
you agree?
Yeah, definitely agree. A couple of players I thought noticed a bit, probably not noticed. They impressed me more, and I thought they were crucial to taking the game on. I thought Hanley and Ellis were great. They played more midfield time this week than they have in any other week. I think I saw a stat where I think Ellis attended like 27 centre bounces on the wing, and Hanley I think was similar, maybe around that 23 or 24. And I've always wondered why Hanley doesn't play more midfield for us, because he does have that pace. He does have that ability to really impact the middle of the ground. If anything, I'd have to say it's because his injuries keep holding him up and keep setting him back. So we've had to be more lenient with how we use him. And
our back line isn't mature enough, so he's quiet.
And I guess with Weller out as well, that's probably a position Weller's very favourite to play. So I guess that helped them, but they certainly provided something which we haven't seen for a few weeks. It was really good to see them there. Lukosius has just been fantastic since his switch down back. He's such a good ball user, and he just looks so at home down there. He can read the play really well. And then a couple of criticisms. I thought Swallow, Harbrow and Witts, as leaders of the club, they had really poor games, I thought. Now, Witts did an amazing job in the ruck, give him that. But he had a 33% disposal efficiency from about 12 disposals.
A couple of rotten shots on goal where he totally burned a player in the clear.
I mean, we probably just expect more from that than Witts. But I wasn't happy with that result. I thought if those three players had more of an impact, we probably could have won this game. I mean, Swallow only had, I think, 12 or 13 touches as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he did play a lot of the game on Cripps, but you want to get a better result. Okay, so I think Swallow spent most of the time on Cripps. Lemons spent a bit of the time on Cripps. I think maybe Fiorini started off speed. I think they shared it around. I think Risho might have spent a bit of time on it as well. So, you got to look at in that context. And a lot of the time when they were trying to tag Cripps would go to Swallow and tag him. So it's one of those sort of situations where, Cripper, he didn't have the best game. He ended up with 18 disposals himself. So let's look at that. So he's negated 2 or 3 of our players, and we've negated him, and they've smashed it. And the 18 touches that Cripps got is worth 25 touches for any other player, because he had 94.4% disposal efficiency and just made every touch hurt.
Yeah, sirens on our end, guys. Something's going on in Brisbane, Tom. All right.
Yeah, just usual Brisbane Lions training. The thugs are out trying to bloody kill each other.
Okay, so let's move into our votes for the round. I gave my first vote, 1 vote to Fiorini. His 32 disposals, 6 marks. He was very influential in setting up a lot of the attacking play. So good result from him. Who's your 1 vote for, Tom?
Darcy McPherson. He had a nice goal, which got us up and about. His disposal efficiency wasn't terrific, but 10 tackles.
But I remember watching Darcy McPherson, and he is so quick to get the ball from hand to foot from a clearance. I completely understand why his disposal efficiency isn't great, and it's usually above 50-odd% anyway, so that's not too bad considering how quickly he gets his foot to the ball.
It's not. It's not, and I'd love to see him getting 20-odd touches playing primarily as a forward, because I think he's got that defensive pressure. Really does a good job for us in the forward line there. Who'd you have for 2?
2 votes. I had Tuke Miller, 27 disposals, 11 tackles, 9 marks, 23 pressure acts, and 67% disposal efficiency. It was a fantastic all-round game for Tuke. And after a slow start last 3 or 4 games since he came back from injury, he's finally started to find his groove and the level of pace he needs to be at for AFL. Fantastic result from him.
Yeah, I had Tuke at number 2 as well. For all the reasons you said, 11 tackles. And a couple of 1%ers. I love 1%ers. He led the team for inside 50s, and he had a goal assist. I love goal assists. Like, Tuke had an all-round game, 9 marks. One of them was contested, which is good for him. A couple of clearances. You know, he did a lot, and it was so good to see him back. In fact, I don't really follow AFL fantasy. I've never been involved in it, but he by far and away got the highest number of fantasy points of any player on the entire ground.
Oh, and I believe it. It was a really good performance from him. And for 3 votes, I went with Brodie. Unfortunately, he's done his hamstring, but his 26 disposals, 10 tackles, 25 pressure acts, and 73% disposal efficiency, his impact that he had in that second half when he was moved onto the ball, just really got the ball out to our runners and was able to get Suns players moving at a faster rate, and that really put Carlton on the back foot, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I want to give a special mention to Alex Sexton with his 3 goals. He also had a goal assist. So to sort of play a part in 35% of our points, he's doing his job. I'd like to see him getting some more of the ball, but I think that's got more to do with the rest of the team getting more inside 50s and the rest of the forward line operating well. I also gave my 3 points to Will Brodie. I think I hinted at it a bit earlier. He's doing everything that's asked for him. 6 clearances. The only guy who's getting more clearances than him is Jared Witts, who's cleaning up his own garbage. We're so much better at clearances in the centre this year. We won it again. We didn't win the stoppages, which we've been really good at, but I think Carlton might have picked our pocket quite a few times there where it wasn't essentially on our midfield or on Witts. It was just their tactics, which we know we're going to have to improve a lot on.
Yep. All right, well, we don't have much time left, so let's just finish up. We haven't done this for a while, actually. The Lockie Weller what a performance moment. We finally had some good Suns performances, so we can actually give something away this week. But we haven't discussed who it is, Tom. Who do you reckon it is? I've got half a mind to give it to Ben King, just for the sake he threw a punch at Riscatelli.
I liked what Stuart Dew said in the aftermatch, because Dew didn't know why the mark was reversed to a free kick. And when they explained to him that Kingy threw a punch and it actually snotted Risha had 7 disposals up to that point, and he only had 12 in the end. I think he might have been a bit groggy. I hope they gave him a concussion test. I think we kind of got to give it to him. If Kingy can give that to a player who we hate, like Dane Zorko, then it's worth the suspension.
Yeah.
And what a performance.
Yep, so Ben King.
Lockie Weller, what a performance.
Save that stuff for the Brisbane game next week. All right, well...
Yeah, or maybe his brother next year when we play.
All right, well, that does us for another episode of the GC Sunscast. Stay tuned to our Facebook for all the latest, and go Suns.
Yeah, go Suns.